Obviously his talents aren't up to par today. Come say hi. Say hi. Hey Warner, if you hear any jingling, sniffs, feet on the floor, it's him. This is my Catahoula Border Collie, Leonardo, King Leo the first. Let's jump on tour, I think. Into it. I'm 22 and I have my own softball team. I am a softball coach. I coach JV for a public high school that is in my area, Little Fruitland, Idaho. At the College of Idaho for 2 years. I played softball for as long as I could probably walk. So throughout this video, I'll be making a lot of softball references, so you may or may not learn how to play the game of softball by the time that we are done here. So we're going to start with our first term. So the way that this is going to go is that I'm going to say the term, and then I will say the exact definition that is in the book. I have the definitions all written down here, so I'm going to say it word by word. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to start out with is strength, mechanical strength. The definition for mechanical strength is the toughness of a material to resist loading, usually measured as a total work or peak force required to permanently deform, yield strength, or break a material, ultimate strength. I chose this one because I think that strength is very important as far as material goes. So we could be talking about any kind of material. We could be talking about, I definitely think that there's a bird in my house, or there's a window open. Can you hear that? Okay. This is not a very good example because then I can always go back to, what am I doing? So the significance of a mechanical strength can be within the body or it can be within a material. So if we apply it to the body for mechanical strength in terms of softball, duh. Mechanical strength is really important within like a material. So as far as a material reference goes, we can take this bat chicken right here. This is a material, very strong. It goes along with the deformation graft. A bat has a dead zone and a, green zone. Dead zones are about here on the end of the bat and here on the beginning. You don't want to hit on the handle, otherwise the ball's not going to go very far. Okay? If you hit the ball within this zone, it's probably going to pop outfield. Okay? Dingers. The player swings the bat, a ball will hit the bat. Okay? So this is the elastic region where the ball will hit the bat absorbs the ball's energy, and then pushes the ball out. So the ball and the bat are making contact, and they both are at their elastic region. Okay, so this is the strength of the ball and the bat. So they both kind of smash, bend, deform. The ball kind of absorbs the bat's energy, the bat absorbs the ball's energy, and then they boom. Okay, so the bat is stronger than the ball, and when the bat comes through and the ball hits it, absorbs, elastic region, can go back to normal shape and then be hit. Okay, there is a yield point, so it can't go back to the original shape, but it doesn't completely break. So sometimes bats will have, this one does not, this one has like chips out of it, but sometimes bats might look deformed or, have a little dent in them, and even a ball can be completely deformed too. Sometimes there's a point where the bat will completely break, and so there'll be a crack in it. It could break in complete half. That usually doesn't happen with these kind of bats because these bats are, this is a composite bat, and so these ones have two pieces on them, so there's a piece right here and they mend it together. So when these bats normally break, they'll break right here. It's not like a wooden bat like when baseball players they use wooden bats, and they could crack anywhere within the bat and splinters go flying everywhere, and it's just a bad thing. Okay. The significance to me of mechanical strength is that my body strength, I have an elastic region, a plastic region, my ultimate strength, and my strength failure. So we're going to go, this isn't technically muscle strength, so muscle strength is different than mechanical strength. So mechanical strength is the strength that my body can withstand a load of force and stuff. I'll take this for example. So when I was in high school, I was a softball pitcher, and you know, that stuff. Okay, so my junior year, I got hit by a ball in practice, a line drive, and thankfully I didn't have much time to flinch or whatever, and so the ball hit me dead red in the middle of my thigh, and so I have all this meat protection from that's protecting my femur, so it didn't even get close to it. So my mechanical strength of my thigh is extremely strong, considering, you know. So I went over the elastic region of my quadricep muscles. I went into the plastic region. There was a little bit of an indent, and then there was some swelling, and then there was a ton of bruising. Okay, but that kind of tested my ultimate strength of my quadriceps, and I think that if it hit any harder, there would have been muscle damage, and there was no muscle damage, thankfully. But I think I definitely think that if it was harder, I would have some muscle damage within there, which, you know, there could have been. I didn't go to the doctor, but it healed, so it didn't break. I didn't need to be fixed or anything. It just did its own thing. Okay, so that was my junior year. My senior year, when we were playing in a game, I had another line drive be hit at me, and I flinched really hard, and I turned my body, and the ball in front of my knee. Okay, it didn't necessarily hit me right here, but it more so hit me right here because I flinched and I turned. So I had failure strength when this happened, because the plastic, the ultimate, and then it failed. So I did have shattered, not necessarily a shattered kneecap, but the cartilage that helps my kneecap go like this when I walk. I had shattered cartilage, and a little bit like it was frayed out. I don't know. I saw the pictures. It was gross. I had to have surgery because my cartilage was like broken and kind of floating around in there. They were worried about my meniscus, but we're good there. Mechanical strength is very important to me, because if that wouldn't have happened, I would be okay today. Word number 2. I wish that was vodka. Number 2 is the force-time relationship, which is also known as the electromechanical delay. Definition in the book says that the delay between motor action potential, electrical signal of muscle depolarization or EMG, and production of muscular force. Okay, that's it. That's all we need to know. It's obviously the relationship between force and time. What more explanation do you need? Let me show you this cool thing. So in the book, we have this neato graph. This is where the quadriceps are getting ready for the extension, and this is the extension. Okay, so if the quadriceps, this force build, and then it's able to do the action. This is so important. Personally, for me, it's really important. We'll take batting, for example. When you're getting ready to bat, your step 1, which is what we always teach, they load. Okay, so loading is really important. It's adding the force, tension, muscle tension. This is firing up your muscles. Okay, you can feel that force, that tension, force-time relationship. Okay, so if you give yourself a little bit of time to build up that force, then your swing is going to be more forceful. Okay, so if I'm just standing here, then load, then swing, it's not going to be as powerful. Okay, so if I stand here, load, I'm ready, waiting for the ball, and then I can swing, it's going to be pretty powerful, right? So, cool. So I would much rather load, force, time, giving myself a little bit of time, and then I'm swinging. Okay, if I don't do the force time, I'm not allowing my muscles to build up that tension, it's going to look like this, and it's not as powerful. Word number 3, the force-length relationship. This one's really cool too. The force-length relationship is skeletal muscle mechanical property that demonstrates how muscle force varies with changes in the muscle length, also called length-tension relationship. Force-length relationship has two components, passive and active. Passive is basically stretching. There is no muscle contraction happening, so when you stretch and you touch a toe, it depends on muscle length and what point you get to where there is force. But we're focusing on the calves and the hammies back here. Okay, so for passive, there's no muscle contraction happening in my legs. And there's no tension, no force, okay? There's force is starting to build up the more my muscles lengthen out. And then as soon as I touch my toes, it has reached, or as far as I can go down to the ground, it has reached its total force load. Your muscles, the more that they lengthen, the more force is put onto your muscles, and then it just kind of depends on how your flexibility, or the second part to it is active. So active tension is when there are contractions within your muscle. So look at this graph. I don't know how well you can see it, but you're gonna be able to see it. Okay, so this one that goes like that one is the passive. So it's showing that there is your muscle length. It's lengthening without any force. So that's the bending over to almost you're pretty close to your toes, and then all of a sudden when you're mid-calf to almost toes, it's okay, there's a lot of force right away. This line that goes from here, here, and down here, that is the active. That's the contraction of the muscles. The force-length relationship is really significant to me and my players because let's take pitching for an example. Pitching a softball takes both passive and active tension within the force-length relationship. And this is because when you pitch a ball, you stride out really far. So I'm going to try to show you in this little tiny room without hurting myself. Okay. For pitching, okay, you do a load just so we can relate it to the force-time relationship, okay? So you do your load, force-time, and then your explosive, okay? So here's the passive. This right here, your legs right here is passive within your groin area because you're stretching out along with your arms and your shoulder, okay? You're stretching out and you're lengthening, okay? So the more flexible you are within this front leg, the further that you're going to go, okay? And then using this back leg as active tension in the force-length relationship, you're contracting this back glute and this back leg and your front quadriceps because you're loading and you're pushing off with this. So the more that you can stretch out and the more that you can push with your back leg will depend on, I'm so tired. Further stride, longer arm motion, faster ball. Number 4 is the strength shortening cycle, SSC. The definition is a common coordination strategy where agonists for a movement are eccentrically loaded into a counter movement immediately before concentric action and motion in the intended direction. And SSC results in larger initial forces and greater concentric work than purely concentric actions. And that is it. Moving on to number 5. Super confusing definition. Personally, I think that when I read it, I was like, hard pass on that word because I don't understand what it is. Yeah, basically, you're moving the opposite way of your intended movement first. So you're moving one way. Let's just say you're going to move backwards before you move forwards. But the backwards motion is quick. You're like, boom. So if you're sprinting, you're like here and then here, okay? So basically, it's creating it's firing your muscle, your muscle fibers with the little spindles inside of them. It's firing those up for you to do your intended movement forward a lot more forcefully than you would if you weren't doing the movement or not doing a forceful short strengthening cycle movement. There's a lot of things in softball that are more focused on the force time and force length relationship than the stretch shortening cycle, because a lot of the movements are not anticipated movements, and you don't know which way you're going to go and when you're going to go, and so your muscles already need to be loaded and have tension within them in order for you to move left or right. So if a ball is coming at you on the right, you're not going to jab step to the left and then go to the right, like the stretch short, that one, this one. There are instances where you do use this stretch shortening cycle within softball, so we're going to take pitching for an example. Arm movement is really important. Not everybody does it, but I do when I pitch. Okay, let's just make sure I don't hit the wall. So when you pitch, you're going to bring your ball back. So this part is the stretch shortening cycle. You're bringing your ball to the opposite direction that you want to go until you come up and over here. Okay, so this allows you to go back and come forward more forceful than it would be if you were just here. Okay, cool. So it looks like this. More forceful rather than that. Do some range of motion for us. Yay! It's a little bit more complicated than that because within the stretch shortening cycle, sometimes it mentions to be forceful with your back movement. Although you want to be forceful with your arm, you don't want to be too forceful, so that kind of adds in the concept of the range of motion principle. Nice. Number 5. Number 5 is a stress fracture. I can't get anything done with him. The definition is a very small fracture in cortical bone caused by repetitive loading and inadequate rest. Although this word is pretty simple, self-explanatory, you don't let yourself get rest. Runners get them all the time in their shins, stress fractures, because they just keep going. The load, they just keep running their miles and miles and miles, and then they don't let their legs rest, and then fracture. Stress fracture, personally, to me, is really important for my pitchers because pitching is such a repetitive movement, and you need to get so many reps in a week, even every day, in order to, accomplish everything that goes into pitching as far as speed and accuracy and learning how to throw a screwball, a changeup, a rise ball, all those kind of different things. And so you need to pitch over and over and over repetitively. It's also very important to remember that you can get stress fractures even though you are doing a natural movement such as running, okay? So with my pitchers, it's very important that if their arm starts to hurt, we need to stop and cool down. Although their arm might not be hurting because of a bone, it could be a muscle. The muscle you're pitching and you're bringing your motion down. I'll grab a ball. So when you're coming down, this elbow will come through first, and then your hand will follow next, okay? So you're putting a lot of stress on the muscles through here. Trust me, I know it's painful. Although that pitching is a lot more than just your forearm. You have your biceps and your shoulders, your back, your abs, everything else. This forearm wrist action gets a lot of strain put on them because they're not as big, and this action right here is very, very forceful, and it can cause a stress fracture if you're not careful. We're done. I think it's time to go play fetch. Thanks for learning. Catch you never.